Hi, this is David Healey at LibraWave. In this video I'd like to walk you through Emerald Flute. Emerald Flute is a sample library. It runs in the Rhapsody player and is available from librawave.com. So this is an Irish flute library, and let me just walk you through the interface. So over here, top left, we've got a velocity control. This allows you to adjust the velocity response of the instrument. So if I was to do this, all notes would be played at maximum velocity. And if I was to bring these down, all notes will be played at minimum velocity. You can add nodes to this table just by clicking, and you can drag them around. You can remove nodes by right-clicking on them, and you can adjust the curve between two nodes by right-clicking and dragging the mouse up or down. Below the velocity we have the AHDSR envelope. This is a standard amplitude envelope. You'll notice the controls are currently greyed out. That's because I'm on the performance articulation. The performance articulation is a special articulation which we'll cover in detail in a moment when we get to the articulations list, but it has its own internal envelope system and it can't be used with the one on screen. However, all the other articulations can. So it's the standard attack curve, attack, hold, decay, sustain and release controls. And these controls can be set for each articulation individually. Okay, let's get to the articulation list. So as you can see, we can click on the different articulations to change articulation. And over at the right, we can see the key switch name, which will trigger the articulation as well. And those keys are coloured in red on the on-screen keyboard. So I can change through those now. At the right hand side of each articulation we have a volume control. These are used for adjusting the relative volume between articulations. So if we go with the short sustain, and we can compare its volume to the staccato, they're actually pretty closely matched. But let's say we want to bring the staccato down a little bit, we can just adjust it here. And you can play around to try and balance the volumes between the different articulations. Now out of the box this should be pretty well balanced anyway, but depending on your performance and your exact piece of music and the way you play, the velocities you have coming in and the CC controls, etc., the articulation volumes might need to just be tweaked a little bit. So that's what these controls are for here, to give you that fine control. Over on the right we have the dynamics controls. We have expression, which by default is controlled by CC11. And we have dynamics for continuous dynamics, and that's controlled by the mod wheel by default. You can reassign these by right-clicking and selecting one of the CCs from this list, or hitting Learn MIDI CC and moving one of your continuous controllers. So not all articulations use the dynamics control. So the shorter articulations like staccato and staccatissimo, they respond to velocity, so the dynamics control is greyed out. But the longer articulations, like the performance and the short sustain, they do use the continuous controller, so this control is available for them. Below the dynamics, we have the vibrato control, so we can control the depth of the vibrato. And with the rate control, we can control its speed. So below that we have the on-screen keyboard. The light keys show the playable range of the instrument. One thing you'll notice is this library is quite dry. We recorded it dry deliberately. So I'm going to add a reverb onto here and then I'll get back to you. So I've added a bit of reverb onto this, and you'll probably want to do the same because it is recorded very dry, but that makes it quite versatile and easier to fit into a virtual space along with the rest of your instruments. So the performance articulation is the main articulation. It's designed for you to be able to create a performance in real time. So it's the long notes with legato, but also it's short notes if you play short notes. It also responds to velocity, so if you play a softer velocity, you'll get a softer attack. And if you play a harder velocity, you'll get a sharper, shorter attack. So I was using my pitch wheel there to add those little bends to each note. You can also glide between notes by holding down your sustain pedal, or CC64, and playing a legato transition. So that's where you play one note, and while you're still holding it down, you play another one. And if you've got the sustain pedal down, it's going to play a glide. And the speed of the glide is controlled by the velocity of the second note. And it doesn't just have to be a note next to it, you can do a larger span. But of course, on a flute, that's not realistic. But I've put it in there because in the virtual world, we can do what we like. But just bear in mind that if you're trying to create a realistic performance, you probably don't want to be doing that glide over more than a whole tone. Another great feature of the performance articulation is playable trills. So you just hold down one note, play another note as you would for a legato transition, and then while you're still holding that first note, you just press and release the second note. So I'll show you with a C, and we'll do C4 to C#4. Also with the performance articulation, you're not limited to playing monophonically. You can play chords. If there's a bit of mismatch in the timing when you press the notes of the chord, you may get a sort of glitch as the instrument thinks you're trying to create a legato transition. So things like that might happen. But if you're pressing the notes together, you shouldn't have any problems. Okay, let's go through the rest of the articulations. So we have the short sustain. So this is a sustain articulation, but they're just a bit shorter. And again, you can play chords with these. There's no legato, they are just individual samples. We have staccato. Staccatissimo, which is shorter still. Percussive, which has a nice percussive attack. Percussive sustain. So these are separate recordings from the percussive samples, and they have the percussive attack, and then it goes into a longer sustain sample. Crans, which are an ornament. And cran sustain, which, like the percussive sustain, is the cran then going into a sustain sound. And again, these are separate recordings, so it's not that we took the cran and then stuck a sustain sample on the end. It is actually one recording, the cran's going into the sustain. And then we have buzz sustain, which again is a sustain note with a different attack. Okay, so that was a walkthrough of Emerald Flute. Thank you for joining me. If you do have any questions or comments, please leave them below the video on YouTube, and enjoy the rest of your day.